As soon as I got to the door, my dad looked me over and said, "Just don't ruin today like you always do." My sister added, "We were actually having a good time until you showed up." I didn't say a word. My daughter squeezed my hand and quietly asked, "Can we go?" I smiled and nodded, and we walked out. An hour later, my mom called in a panic. Why did the card get declined? I switched my phone to Do Not Disturb. 10 minutes later. Have you ever had one of those moments where an entire lifetime of hurt and disrespect just snapped? Where the last thread holding you to a toxic past suddenly, violently broke? Because for me, that moment didn't happen in a roaring argument or a dramatic confrontation. It happened with a casual insult from my father, and the gut-wrenching sight of my 8-year-old daughter flinching, catching the emotional shrapnel of his words. It was supposed to be a family brunch, one of those obligatory gatherings that always felt more like a performance than a real connection. We hadn't even made it through the front door when my dad hit me with it. He gave me that cold, dismissive once-over, the kind that made me feel like I'd committed some grievous social faux pas, like showing up to a funeral in a clown costume. He didn't shout, didn't even raise his voice, which somehow made it worse. With that usual lack of grace that was practically his trademark, he just muttered, "Just don't ruin this day like you usually do." My breath hitched. It was a familiar jab, a well-worn track in the landscape of our family dynamic. But this time it landed differently. I caught my daughter, Lily, standing beside me, her small hand still clutching mine. She flinched, just a subtle tremor, but I saw it. She's only 8, you know? She doesn't always understand the intricate, venomous dance of adult words, but she picks up on tone, on the underlying malice. And seeing that ripple of hurt cross her innocent face? That's what did it. That's what changed everything. Being around my family had aged her in a way that bothered me more than I could ever admit, stealing pieces of her carefree childhood. It was a quiet theft, but relentless. From inside the house, my sister, Chloe, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, called out, "Oh, good, you're here." We were actually having fun until now. And just like always, no one corrected her. No one ever does. They let it slide, let her petty cruelty hang in the air, a tacit endorsement of the narrative that I was always the problem, the dark cloud. I didn't respond. I couldn't. That's how it's always been with them, really. They poke, they prod, they jab with practiced precision, and then they stand back, waiting for a reaction. Waiting for the explosion, the tears, the indignant defense. But over the years, I'd learned the hard way that the best revenge, the only true defense against their endless negativity, is stillness. Absolute, unwavering calm. That, and leaving. Lily tugged my hand gently, her little fingers soft against my palm. "Can we go?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I looked down at her. She had on that little denim jacket she loves, the one with the pink unicorn patch I'd meticulously sewn on after a particularly dramatic sleepover meltdown last year. It was a small detail, but it grounded me, reminded me of who I was protecting. A slow smile spread across my face, a genuine one, for her. I nodded. "Yeah, sweetie. We can go." And just like that, we turned around. We walked back to the car, our backs to the cacophony of their expectations, their judgment, their history. I didn't look back. There was nothing there for me anymore. An hour later, we were in a different world. Lily was slurping a mango smoothie, her eyes wide with wonder as she pointed out clouds shaped like ducks and dragons. The world felt brighter, lighter. And then, my phone started buzzing. Non-stop. A frantic symphony of notification pings. 9 missed calls, all from my mother. I let them go. Then a 10th. And an 11th. Curiosity, that pesky human trait, finally got the better of me. I picked up. "Hello?" I said, my voice carefully neutral. There was no hello back, no pause, no pleasantries. Just a voice edged with panic. Why did the card decline? I could hear the clattering of plates, the murmur of distant conversations, the unmistakable hum of a busy restaurant in the background. Of course. Another lavish meal, another expectation that someone else would foot the bill. I didn't say a word. Just tapped the screen, flipped on Do Not Disturb, and placed the phone back in my bag. The small, silent act felt incredibly powerful. Lily, oblivious to the digital drama unfolding, asked if we could walk by the river next. Sure, I said, a genuine smile returning to my face. The river sounded infinitely better than anything my family could offer. 10 minutes later, another buzz. A text this time. From my dad. What are you trying to prove? This isn't how family works. The sheer audacity, the hypocrisy of it all, nearly made me laugh out loud. This was the same man who once told me, with a straight face, if you didn't want people to use you, maybe don't make yourself so available. He'd said that after they used my good credit, my good name, to refinance their beloved lake cabin, the one they treated like a private resort. This was the same family that called me selfish every single time I dared to say no, but then lauded me as responsible when they suddenly needed another $2,000 for home repairs. They had completely forgotten who paid the bills. Who ran the accounts. Who, in reality, owned 80% of the family business because they were all too busy exploring their spiritual paths or claiming to be too old to learn new systems when my grandfather passed away. That card they used like it magically sprouted from a money tree in their backyard? It was the first thing I shut down. And they genuinely thought it was just a glitch. Oh, they had no idea what was coming next. They called 13 more times that day. Left voicemails filled with manufactured concern, with a fake calm that didn't fool me for a second. My mom even tried texting Lily, using my daughter's name in an attempt to manipulate me. That crossed a line I didn't even know I had until I saw her name pop up on that iPad screen. That was unacceptable. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't even feel a flicker of guilt. Just a cold, quiet determination. The next morning, they tried using the card again. Once at a luxury car dealership, my sister, apparently, had been planning to lease a brand new BMW. And again, at some ridiculously expensive resort spa in Sedona, a wellness retreat my mom had booked for herself. Both declined. That's when my inbox lit up. First, an email from our family lawyer, Mitchell. He'd been with us for over a decade, or more accurately, with them. He CC'd my dad and sister, the subject line a masterpiece of passive-aggressive legal speak, clarification regarding corporate expense access. The body was short, almost terse. Monica, please confirm this is a temporary restriction and not a formal change in the business structure or access protocol. The underlying tone was clear. What the hell are you doing? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the corporate dashboard. I started scrolling, systematically checking the most recent transactions. And then I started flagging every single non-business expense from the past 24 months. The sheer scale of their entitlement, their casual pilfering, was breathtaking. When the final tally flashed on the screen, my stomach clenched, $181,392. And that, I knew, was just what they hadn't bothered to hide. It was a pattern of abuse, a silent hemorrhage that had been draining the company for years. Then, with a resolve that felt both chilling and invigorating, I scheduled a board meeting. I didn't tell them. See, when my grandfather passed away, he had, in his wisdom or perhaps his naivete, left the company equally to all of us. But I was the only one, who actually wanted to run it. My dad, ever the procrastinator, claimed he was too old to learn the new systems. My sister, Chloe, was deeply engrossed in exploring her spiritual path, which mostly involved expensive retreats and vague pronouncements about cosmic energy. And my mom? She wanted to focus on interior design, a hobby that somehow always required significant capital from the business. So, they'd all enthusiastically signed over their management shares to me, in exchange for a generous monthly draw, $11,000 each, on the condition that they would stay completely out of operations. For a while, it worked. For a time, I thought the piece was worth the money. I kept the company not just afloat, but thriving. I expanded into 3 new states, built a dedicated team of 32 employees, working 80-hour weeks to make it happen. I believed in my grandfather's legacy, believed in the company. But they, with their endless demands and casual disregard, had crossed every single line. The board meeting happened quietly. Just me and 2 of our senior advisors, both of whom had been with the company for years and, I suspected, had been silently waiting for me to clean house for just as long. They understood the situation without me having to spell out every painful detail. Their nods of support were all the validation I needed. In that meeting, I revised the company structure. I ended all family stipends, effective immediately. And, perhaps most satisfyingly, I had Mitchell removed as legal counsel due to a blatant conflict of interest. He couldn't serve both the company and the interests of individuals who were actively draining it. I drafted the letters myself, each word precise, each sentence carrying the weight of years of unspoken grievances. I mailed them certified, specifically so they would have to sign when they received them. There would be no denying receipt, no claiming ignorance. 3 days later, the screaming started. Not in my presence, thankfully. My dad showed up at my office, or rather, he tried to. Security, well briefed, calmly turned him away. My sister, Chloe, opted for her usual dramatic flair, sending a 12-paragraph Facebook message that started with the classic, "You've always been jealous of me," and ended with the chilling, "You'll regret this when we're gone." My mom, ever the master of emotional manipulation, tried the old guilt angle, leaving a voicemail where she sobbed about how family is supposed to support each other. But her version of support, I realized, looked a whole lot like theft. And I was done supporting that. That weekend, something shifted within me. The rage, the resentment, it all began to recede, replaced by a profound sense of peace. Lily and I went camping for the first time. Just the 2 of us. No emails, no cell service, just the rustle of leaves and the crackle of a campfire. We made s'mores, sticky and sweet, and she asked if we could build a treehouse when we got back. In that moment, watching her bright, unburdened face, I knew I had done the right thing. Meanwhile, back home, the collapse had only just begun. By the time we got back from the camping trip, everything was different. The silence of the woods was starkly contrasted by the digital battlefield that was my phone. I hadn't checked it in 2 days, a truly liberating experience. But now, it screamed for attention. Over 70 missed calls, a barrage of angry texts from numbers I didn't even recognize, and a flood of emails, all demanding the same thing: why had I done this? Why had I cut them off? The final straw, the one that really solidified my resolve, came from Mitchell. A formal letter this time, not a casual email. He was trying to reverse the decision to remove him as counsel, citing inadequate notification and long-standing loyalty to the family entity. I almost laughed out loud. This was the man who had billed me $400 an hour for emotional labor after a board call last year, where he'd mostly just listened to my family complain about my management decisions. Loyalty, I thought, clearly wasn't part of his billing package. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already hired new counsel, a quiet, sharp woman named Eloise who specialized in cleaning up messy legacy family firms. She reviewed everything, the history, the documents, the flagged expenses. She nodded once, a small, knowing gesture, and simply said, "About time." Just 2 words, but they spoke volumes. They were all the validation I needed. Back at the house, amidst the ordinary return to routine, I found 3 unopened packages from stores I never ordered from. My mom, in her infinite wisdom, had used the business account to buy a 20-foot-long Dweller coffee table, yes, 20 feet, and a chandelier that looked like it belonged in a palace. I just stared at them, shaking my head. The sheer, unmitigated gall. Everything was getting returned. That was the last thing I processed before shutting the account down for good. The silence that followed was eerie. No calls, no messages, no threats. Just, nothing. It stayed like that for 6 days. It was almost unsettling, like the calm before a storm, or perhaps, the quiet after one. Then, a mutual friend called me. Someone I hadn't spoken to in months, one of those well-meaning, but ultimately meddlesome, types. "Hey," she began, her voice tentative, "I don't want to get involved, but your sister is posting videos online." She paused, then added, "She's crying on camera, Emily. She's saying you're blackmailing the family and that you tricked them into giving you control." I found one clip. That was enough. The fake tears, the slow zooms on her distraught face, the dramatic pauses for effect, and, of course, the Venmo link strategically placed in her bio. She called herself a victim of corporate gaslighting. I didn't say a word to my friend. I just forwarded the video to Eloise. Then, I went back to braiding Lily's hair, a simple, grounding act that felt so much more real than anything Chloe was broadcasting online. 2 days later, my dad emailed me a PDF file. It was a lawsuit draft. They were trying to claim I'd acted in bad faith, that they didn't understand the documents they'd signed 10 years ago, and that the monthly payouts had become their expected livelihood. The language was clumsy, almost desperate. Mitchell must have drafted it for them before I removed him. Eloise reviewed the draft, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. "They're bluffing," she said. "They won't file." And she was right. They didn't. Because they knew. They knew that discovery, the legal process of exchanging evidence, would absolutely ruin them. The documents, the emails, the recordings from board calls where they openly joked about mooching off Emily, I had it all. Every single piece of evidence that painted a clear picture of their long-standing exploitation. They knew I wasn't bluffing. But here's the thing. I wasn't just cutting them off financially. I was cutting them off completely. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about reclaiming my life, my identity, my peace. The first real crack in their arrogant armor came on a random Wednesday morning. I was sipping lukewarm coffee, scanning invoices, a typical start to my day. Then I saw the mail carrier. He dropped a thick, official-looking envelope on my doorstep. Certified mail. My stomach tightened a little. I thought maybe it was another desperate, ill-conceived letter from Mitchell, or perhaps a passive-aggressive Hallmark card from my mother, pretending nothing had happened. It wasn't. It was foreclosure paperwork. Addressed to me, or more specifically, to Emily Walters, as the supposed co-signer of a $200,000 second mortgage on the lake cabin. The same lake cabin my parents had proudly claimed was fully paid off years ago. The same cabin they used as their personal vacation retreat, but conveniently justified as a company asset to get massive tax breaks. I stood there in my kitchen, the morning light streaming in, reading the document line by line, my stomach twisting into a cold, hard knot. My signature was on the loan documents. Except I'd never seen them before in my life. They had forged my name. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't crying. I just stood there, engulfed in the kind of chilling silence you learn to embody when people around you have taken too much, for too long. It was calculated. Premeditated. And then I understood. They had used the business card to make the monthly payments on that fraudulent loan. When I shut down the card, the payments stopped. That's why it was foreclosing now. They had run out of options, run out of my money. I called the mortgage company. At first, they were polite, professional. Until I said the word fraud. Then the tone shifted. I got transferred to 3 different departments. Finally, a manager admitted that the cosigner authorization had come through an email verification. I asked for the email address. It was a Gmail address, not mine. Just one letter off. Na 1981. My name, Emily, with one letter missing, tucked into a fake account they had used to approve the loan without me ever knowing. The sheer audacity, the intricate web of deceit, was almost impressive in its depravity. I sent the documents to Eloise. Her response was immediate, concise. "If you want to press charges, we're already halfway there." I didn't answer her right away. Not because I was unsure, but because I was processing the depth of their betrayal. That night, while packing for a quiet weekend away with Lily by the ocean, I went to the back of my closet, searching for a duffel bag. Instead, my fingers brushed against something strange, wedged behind an old photo album, a manila folder, dusty, unlabeled. Inside were old tax documents, some still paper-clipped from years ago. Most of it was junk, but at the very bottom, there was a thick envelope addressed to my grandfather. The return address was from a law firm I didn't recognize, and it was dated 2 months before his death. I almost threw it aside, dismissed it as more family clutter. But curiosity, that persistent little voice, won out. The next morning, I called the firm. After a long, unnerving pause, the woman on the other end said, "You might want to come in for this." 2 hours later, I was sitting in their office, staring at a photocopy of an addendum to my grandfather's will. An addendum I had never, ever been told about. It changed everything. The addendum stated, in plain, unambiguous legal language, that he was transferring 100% ownership of the business to me. Not 80%. Not shared. Full, absolute control. He had written that he feared the rest of the family would misuse the company, that he believed I was the only one capable of running it with integrity, the only one he truly trusted. But somehow, impossibly, it had never made it to the reading of the will. How? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The lawyer, a kind, elderly man, shrugged. It was mailed to his home address, as instructed. After that, it was out of our hands. I sat in my car afterward for nearly 20 minutes, watching people come and go from a gas station across the street. The world was spinning, indifferent, like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. They had found that envelope. They had hidden it from me. They had lied to the lawyer who read the will. They had let me believe they still had some legal claim to the company, and they had collected $11,000 a month under that monstrous lie for nearly a decade. For 10 years, they had stolen from me, from my grandfather's legacy, from my future. I drove straight to Eloise's office. "If this holds up," I asked, my voice tight with a mixture of awe and outrage, "what happens?" She didn't even blink. "We retroactively nullify their shares. Every dollar they took, they'll owe it back. With interest." There was a long, heavy pause before I spoke again. "They'll never recover from this." Eloise gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "No," she said softly. "But maybe they'll finally understand who they were dealing with." Eloise didn't waste time. Once the addendum was verified and filed with the appropriate authorities, she moved faster than I thought the legal system even allowed. Within days, I had confirmation from the court. I was the sole owner of the company. Not 80%. 100%. Retroactive to the very day my grandfather passed away. They had buried that document, thinking I'd never find it, never question the terms, never push back. They were wrong. Eloise filed a restructuring notice with the IRS, the state, and the business registry. It was official. Their monthly draws were now retroactively deemed unauthorized. Their claim to any stake in the business was erased with one decisive court stamp. And the kicker? They now owed back taxes on all the money they had taken, nearly $1.3 million. So, I didn't sue them. Not right away. Instead, I did something worse, something far more satisfying. I gave them 30 days. 30 days to vacate every company-owned property they'd been living in like royalty. The lake cabin, which had been listed under corporate retreat expenses for years. Gone. The downtown condo my sister had lavishly redecorated and turned into her personal Instagram set. Gone. The sprawling Arizona house my parents used as their desert escape during business trips? Gone. Each of them received a letter, notarized and hand-delivered by a process server. All it said was this: "You are no longer authorized to reside in or access the properties listed below. You have 30 days to vacate. Legal enforcement will follow any violation." I never heard screaming so loud through silence. I didn't need to hear their actual words, the sheer force of their shock and outrage resonated even through the quiet. That same week, I found something else I hadn't seen coming. An envelope from the IRS. Thin, but heavy with implication. Turns out my mother, in her relentless pursuit of luxury, had filed tax returns over the past several years, claiming significant consulting income from the business. Not a small amount either, 6 figures per year. All based on fake documentation. She had used old company letterheads and, unbelievably, forged signatures. Mine included. Eloise was the one who broke the news after reviewing the file. She could be looking at serious charges, Emily. I said nothing. I just added it to the growing folder, the one I was building quietly, methodically. 3 days later, my sister's kids were expelled from their exclusive private school. I had calmly, definitively, cancelled the tuition payments. She hadn't bothered to pay a single semester herself in 3 years, just forwarded the invoice to me like it was part of some unspoken, unbreakable deal. She found out from the school's automated system. Then came the voicemail. It was only 5 seconds long. Just her voice, raw with fury and a desperate, clinging kind of pain. You'll regret this. We're blood. I didn't delete it. I saved it. Labeled it Family Final Days. What none of them realized, what they still don't understand, is that this wasn't revenge. Not really. This was repair. I had spent years being the duct tape, holding them all together, patching over their reckless spending, their emotional demands, their utter inability to function independently. They had used my generosity like a faucet. Twist it when needed, let it gush, then walk away when done. And now that it was off, they didn't know how to breathe. My dad tried to text, a single, desperate sentence, "This is your family. You're throwing it all away." I didn't respond. He never once asked if I was okay when I was working 80-hour weeks to keep the company alive, while they drained it like a bank account with no limit. He never once cared about my well-being, only about what I could provide. The final push, the ultimate confirmation that I had made the right choices, came on a random Tuesday. I got a call from another mutual friend, one of those distant, family-adjacent types who always thinks they're the peacemaker. "She's crying every day, Emily," the friend said, her voice laced with concern. "You should have seen her packing. Your sister's heartbroken." I almost believed it. Until the friend accidentally forwarded a screenshot of a group chat. My sister was calling me mentally unstable, saying I was obsessed with control and planning to take everything out of spite. They still didn't get it. I wasn't taking everything. I was just reclaiming what was already mine. They went quiet after that. No more threats, no more fake apologies, no surprise visits or last-ditch efforts to change the narrative. Just silence. A silence so complete it felt like winter after a storm. Everything still, nothing moving. I didn't hear from my dad after the eviction deadline passed. My mom didn't bother to text when the Arizona house was officially sold. My sister deleted her video rants and shut down her Instagram entirely. And Mitchell? I assume he slithered off into some other unsuspecting family mess he could leech from. He never contacted me again. By the time the 30 days were up, everything was finalized. The properties were locked, utilities transferred, and a locksmith had been through each address, changing every single lock. I sent a small crew to clean up. The lake cabin was the worst. Wine stains everywhere, broken drawer handles, and a gold-framed photo of my sister, prominently displayed in the master bedroom, like she actually owned the place. They left everything behind, just walked away, like they thought I'd come running to fix it. They still didn't understand. I wasn't coming back. The company, now completely mine, has never run smoother. We cut unnecessary costs, raised salaries for our core, dedicated staff, and doubled profits in 1 quarter. And not once, not a single time, did anyone ask about my family. No one missed them. The relief in the office, the shift in energy, was palpable. It felt like a weight had been lifted from everyone, not just me. I took Lily to New York to see the first snow. We ice skated in Central Park, ate overpriced waffles at midnight, and stayed in a hotel with a rooftop view that made her gasp with delight. She looked at me one night, her little face illuminated by the city lights, and said, "You don't work as much anymore, Mommy." I told her I was working on something different now. I was working on us. My parents used to talk about family like it was a currency, something you invest in for what you might get back. But that's not what it is. Not to me, not anymore. Family isn't about who's related to you by blood. It's about who protects you, who shows up, who listens, who respects your boundaries, who celebrates your successes and supports you through your failures. And they failed on all of those counts. Every single one. Maybe one day they'll understand what they lost. Maybe not. I used to wonder if they'd ever change. If one of them would show up with a real, heartfelt apology. If there'd be a moment where they finally, truly got it. But I've stopped waiting for that. I've stopped hoping for it. It's a peace I chose for myself and my daughter. We haven't spoken in months now. Not a word. And, perhaps surprisingly, no one speaks to each other anymore. The web of their interconnected toxic dependency has unraveled completely. And maybe, just maybe, that's for the best. For now, there's peace. There's quiet. There's space to breathe and raise my daughter without the suffocating weight of people who only knew how to take. I don't know if there will be updates to this story. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the final chapter. But for now, thank you all for your attention and your support. It means more than you know.